delete everything you have ever built for us. I'm not in tech support. In fact, none of my job descriptions ever included anything remotely resembling tech support. Yet, life finds a way. As a longtime night shift worker who often hung out with the local IT folks and demonstrated Tier 1 support skills, looking up error messages, and even Tier 2 willingness and ability to learn and improve, I was promoted to an honorary tech support role. It was a win-win, win-lose scenario for the guys, as they could chill at home while on call. In the meantime, I resolved low-level on-site issues and had something interesting, or at least different, to do in addition to my boring desk jockey job. The following story is not related to any of the above. Plugging VGA cables into desk stations to fix broken computers is not a story. It's business as usual. A few companies later, when the buzzwords business intelligence, data analysis, data-driven decisions, etc. started to pop up on the corporate BS bingo, I was already involved in those things at my current workplace. As usual, my job description had nothing to do with it, but I had to manually create a lot of reports, work with a lot of data. I'm as lazy as it comes. If I have to do the same task twice, I'm going to spend an unreasonable time trying to automate it. The result of my laziness was a Power BI dashboard hosted on SharePoint. Behind the scenes and the shiny charts, there was a giant cluster F, as I had to solve issues with the tools I had access to. Python calling SAP GUI scripts to run custom queries, then reading and transforming the data from the resulting exported Excel files, just to spit it out again as a new and improved spreadsheet, PowerShell to manage SharePoint, then some auto hotkey and Power Automate to maximize the chaos. It had a lot of moving parts, tried to do way too much, but had classes. It was also a horrible mess, but I tried to keep it as organized as possible. Code on GitHub in a private repo, regular and conventional commits, issue tracking, well-written documentation for everything, all the other best practices. My team's standard reporting tasks, which were usually taking an entire week at the end of each month, condensed down to a few hours, which in theory could have been less if I trusted myself, but I always QA'd the final result before releasing it for use. So, in addition to my standard role, which I performed above expectations according to my annual reviews, I was the local BI developer / data analyst / ad hoc tech support. At every salary increase cycle, I always had to ask for my salary at the top of the range of the role which I had on paper, citing the above reasons. The company always fought tooth and nail, and it was always a painful and bit humiliating experience. Unfortunately, after a few years, they decided that, now that you've built these solutions, we don't need you anymore. We only need to hire someone to maintain it. You are fired. According to my contract, this would mean I'm still employed for another 60 days. I made sure to double check everything, rewrite some of the documentation to be more clear, refactor the code, especially my early kludgy solutions, made backups on my team's OneDrive, fixed as many issues as I could, etc. In short, I tried to make sure that everything goes smoothly when my replacement takes over. By the time my notice period was up, they still couldn't find anyone, as they'd been advertising a wonderful 3-in-1 package. Yep, my successor was supposed to do everything I was doing. My last day was at the end of the month, and I pushed out one more update under the watchful eye of my supervisor. As soon as they saw that everything had been updated, security came in and my boss said to delete everything from GitHub, as it's an external site and a security risk. I tried to explain that it's tied to my corporate email, and it would be best to keep it alive and transfer ownership to my successor. They wouldn't budge and told me to delete it. Okay then, let's nuke it from orbit. Told them there's a local copy, duh, on my work laptop and also on OneDrive, not in my private folder. They said IT will take care of it. Apparently, that meant a deep cleanse of my laptop without retaining any of the data. Well, the she's on maternity leave woman's laptop was still in the locker after 4 years. So the only remaining copy was in my former team's shared OneDrive folder. A month passed, and my former boss called me asking for help. They still haven't found a replacement, unsurprisingly. Not wanting to burn any bridges, and because I'm an exploitable idiot, I told them sure, I'll help, toss in a steak dinner voucher for 2 at a local mid-range restaurant, and I'll help. They were dragging their feet, despite the fact that my ask was significantly lower in value than what the contractor rate would have been, and I knew they could expense it anyway. After a day or two, they gave in. I hopped on my bike, signed an NDA, got a laptop, and asked a team member to add me to the Teams channel so I can start working. As I started to poke around on OneDrive, I couldn't find my backup folder. After a while, I went to my former boss to ask where it was moved, as I can't find it anywhere. "Oh, we deleted it. It didn't seem important. It was only a couple files though. I'm sure you can easily do it again." Those few files were the result of hundreds of hours of experimentation, trying to figure out how the various systems work together. Just the pandas part was a couple hundred lines of uneffing data, and without documentation, there was literally zero chance of recreating it in a short amount of time. "Can't you just restore it from that online hub thing?" Not really, as you specifically asked me to delete it despite my protests. I left without getting my steak dinner. A few days later, they called me again, asking how much it would cost to make a brand new dashboard. Apparently, some corporate bigwigs overseas were using it for their C-level BS PowerPoint meetings. Remember, it included global data, and we're pretty pissed that the fancy charts were gone. I may or may not have found a relatively recent local version of the Git repo on my old Raspberry, which I may or may not have used to do some of the number crunching, as my old crappy corporate laptop could barely handle anything. Yep, a Raspberry Pi 4 8GB outperformed it. May or may not have forgotten to mention this obvious security breach and build out my hours as I've been creating everything from scratch. I'm just gonna say it, most corporations suck. Like, how do you replace the one guy who went above and beyond the job's role? Personally, I cannot wait until robots take all our jobs, so nobody ever has to deal with a crappy job like that again. Customer wanted us to predict the future. Hello everyone, first time poster. I don't work in tech support in a traditional sense, but at a transportation company utilizing different software. In the case of this story, an electronic logging device, ELD, platform. My team and I try to handle hardware and dashboard issues for our dispatchers, drivers, and occasionally customers before elevating to actual tech support. We had a particular issue with one customer who wanted tracking data for regular shipments we handled for them, specifically to see its progress in real time and ensure the driver's route compliance. Our normal tracking hardware didn't fit the needs of our customer in this case, but luckily our ELD provider had a battery-powered asset tracker that could be affixed to a pallet of product and send us real-time location pings at predetermined intervals. We could also give the customer their own dashboard access to see the historical data. Customer was thrilled with the concept and wanted to run some trials. No problem, we get the trackers, send them to the customer with clear instructions on how to affix them to the product, and wait for a shipment to come in. I offered to come to the customer's site and show him the dashboard and explain it in person, but he assured me he could figure it out. After the first shipment comes and goes, I look at the ping data from the previous night, and all seems in order. When the second shipment is on its way, however, I get this email at 9:30 p.m. after the load left our customer. Setting the map in advance for multiple day tracking isn't working. It works for runs that were completed in the past, but it won't allow me to expand the range to a future date. In order to make it work, I would have to wait until after midnight. I don't like this limitation. I read this a few times before I realized what his issues with the devices was. So I replied, regarding the tracking data, you can't set the date in the future, because the nature of the device is that it tracks real-time location. You can't select a future date, because that activity hasn't happened yet. A few minutes later, I get a call from him. You told me this thing would tell me where my shipment is. Yes, sir. If the tracker is with your shipment, it will ping its location at whatever interval we set it to. But what happens if I want to see tomorrow or the next day? Well, those days haven't happened yet. I can't tell you where your shipment is going to be, just where it's been. Mind you, these could be set to 30-minute pings, so fairly recent for long shipments. 5 minutes of me trying to explain the concept of a real-time location ping and how I cannot tell him where it will ping next. That's not going to work for me then. I'm sure there's a product out there that will let me set it for the future. Well, sir, when you find that, I'd be very interested in seeing it for myself. A few days later, I got a call from my boss saying the customer wants to move forward with the tracking system. I guess he finally figured out his demands were literally unrealistic. I wish, random customer. Being able to predict the future of where my package is would be really nice. Unfortunately, since we can't predict the future, it's impossible. Oh, wait, I think I just did it. I predict you'll press the like button on this video. Corny jokes aside, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.